Welcome back! This is part 2 of my video series where I talk about every single archetype in Master Duel. This time we've got everything from boneless Nordic gods to spooky robots and even something truly otherworldly. Hope you enjoy. Number 6, Aesir, or just generally the Nordics. Do you like Norse mythology and giant synchro boss monsters? Well, we have an archetype for that. Nordics are a synchro-focused archetype that's actually made up of 3 other archetypes. To prevent these fairly underwhelming cards from taking up more parts of this list, I'm gonna cover them all right here. I should also mention that there's been a lot of effort to try and homogenize the 3 archetypes into working together. Hello, future me here. This was the part of the review where I said that most of the Nordic archetypes don't actually work together, but upon further review, that's not the case. The Alfars mostly just care about monsters being Nordics, and it seems like it's only really the Nordic beasts that care about them being in a specific archetype. So yeah, I'm fucking dumb, and the Nordics have kind of always been at least a little bit synergistic with each other. Their main goal is to bring out one of 3 big synchros themed after the 3 most popular Nordic gods, Odin, Loki, or Thor. Each of these are tied to one of the component archetypes, with Loki being tied to the discount Cloudian Alfars, Thor being tied to the fairly generic-looking beasts, and Odin being tied to the Valkyrie-esque ascendants. These days, all of the ridiculous effort one used to have to go through to some of the Aesir gods has been mitigated by more recent support allowing them to shit out an Aesir god with minimal effort. The main issue is that the Aesir gods, while being decently strong, aren't really up to snuff with the modern game's power level, and instead rely on spells and traps only usable by them to crank their power closer to modern standards, and even then they really just don't get there. The archetype is ultimately just kind of boring, and really desperately needs a retrain of the 3 boss monsters, or even more bosses to summon. There's been a ton of effort with modern support to try and make them playable, but in my opinion, they haven't been able to break out of 3 due to their entire strategy focusing on getting one big beefy boss onto the board and then just passing. But, I mean, hey, if you have a raging hard-on for Nordic theming, I won't stop you from running them. Number 7, Alien. Do you like cosmic scourges that infiltrate societies at every level only to consume an entire planet's worth of living, thinking beings with complex emotions for the sake of propagating more of the mother species? Well, we have an apparently terrifying archetype for that. One of the oldest archetypes in the game, aliens were introduced in the GX era and are appropriately themed around, guess what? Aliens. Despite its humble beginnings, this archetype has continued to receive support throughout the years, and it can now sport some decently strong boss monsters. Aliens are mainly focused around spreading AE counters to infect their opponent's monsters and cripple their board through a variety of control effects. There's a lot of these different effects. Most of them are focused around things like stealing enemy monsters or crippling them to the point that they're not able to do anything, and this ties into the fact that the entire deck really is just entirely based around control. As such, their major weakness is the fact that their power output is pretty bad. Even their boss monsters rarely, if ever, actually break 3k attack, so you're going to have to rely on your effects if you want to do literally anything. They're not the strongest archetype in the game right now, but they can be a decent threat provided the board they're up against isn't immune to everything under the sun, so they'll go ahead and get a 3. Number 8, Allure Queen. Do you really like slow gameplay and stealing your opponent's monsters? Well, we have an archetype for that. Allure Queen is allegedly an archetype of level monsters designed around stealing their opponent's cards and attaching them to themselves to use powerful effects. Unfortunately, they're old, extremely outdated level monsters that are basically useless in the modern game. Unless these cards get a retrain, there is no reason to even craft them or remember that they exist. Number 9, Ally of Justice. Do you like hyper-specific counters that aren't even good at their counter? Well, we have several archetypes for that, and this is one of them. Ally of Justice is an ancient deck from the Synchro era specifically designed around countering light monsters. Even when they're playing against modern decks focusing around light monsters, they're a little more than a slight inconvenience. There's maybe like 2 cards in Ally of Justice that you can craft, and even then, they're mainly used for splashing when you know you're fighting against a specifically light archetype, and even then, there's probably better cards that can counter that deck. Ally of Justice were crafted to hard counter an archetype at the very beginning of the Duel Terminal series called Worms, who were light flip monsters. And you know what's not super relevant in the game anymore? Light flip monsters. Either of them. Like, light monsters are still around in a pretty decent capacity, but flip monsters are mostly just gimmick decks that don't last very long. Don't even look at Ally of Justice. The brain cells you save will thank me. Number 10, Altergeist. Do you like ghosts and being excluded from your friend group? Well, there's an archetype for that. One of the many banes of my existence in this godforsaken card game, Altergeist is a link-focused control deck that is almost exclusively focused on preventing your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! They're very strong, very annoying, and if I never have to play against them again, I'll be a happy man. That said, they're not quite strong enough to hit meta. In the current Master Duel meta, they're basically the little cousin to Drytron. They've got the same annoying playstyle, they're just less effective at it. Due to the fact that they're still relatively strong, just due to being able to pump out a lot of negates, I'm gonna go ahead and give these guys a 2. Alright, that's all for this episode. Go ahead and leave a comment below correcting anything I got I'm blatantly wrong, and I'll try to include it in a future video. Other than that, please leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you want, and make sure you to share this video with your friends, as word of mouth is far more consistent than the YouTube algorithm ever will be. Hope you all have a good day, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye!